The arrival. The Valerian Empire had conquered 17 star systems in less than a century. Their philosophy was simple: might makes right and compliance ensures survival. When their scanners detected a small blue planet in the Sol system teeming with primitive life and unusual energy signatures, Fleet Commander Zephron ordered immediate annexation protocols. The Armada emerged from slipspace above Earth on a Tuesday morning. 300 warships materialized in low orbit, their hulls gleaming like obsidian knives against the sun. Within minutes, every communication device on the planet received the same message in perfectly translated languages. People of Earth, you are now subjects of the Valerian Empire. Resistance is futile. Compliance is mandatory. You have 72 hours to surrender all weapons and submit to imperial authority. In Geneva, UN Secretary-General Amara Okonkwo stared at the holographic projection hovering above the Emergency Council table. The alien fleet commander's face was reptilian, with amber eyes that radiated absolute certainty. Around her, representatives from every nation sat in stunned silence. "They think we're primitives," muttered General Marcus Kane, the American Joint Chiefs representative. His weathered face showed more irritation than fear. "We need to respond carefully," Amara said, her Nigerian accent thick with tension. "We know nothing about their capabilities." "We know enough," interrupted Dr. Yuki Tanaka, Japan's chief xenotechnology advisor. She pulled up data streaming from orbital telescopes. "Their energy signatures are massive, but their ship designs are inefficient. They're using brute force technology, not elegance." "That doesn't mean we can fight them," countered Ambassador Viktor Petrov from Russia. Amara raised her hand for silence. "We have 3 days. Let's use them wisely." Across the globe, humanity reacted predictably. Some panicked, some prayed, others prepared. But mostly people got angry. Humans had fought wars over everything from resources to religions, from borders to beliefs. The one thing that had always united them was their fierce independence. The idea of bowing to alien overlords struck something primal in the collective human psyche. In Colorado, beneath Cheyenne Mountain, a different conversation was happening. Colonel Reeves sat across from a civilian scientist named Dr. Elias Thorne. Between them lay classified files marked Project Titan. "Tell me we're ready," Reeves said. Elias adjusted his glasses nervously. "Ready is relative. The technology works, but we've never field-tested it against actual alien hostiles." "That's not what I asked." "Then yes, we're ready." Meanwhile, aboard the Valerian flagship Dominion's Fist, Zephron reviewed the preliminary scans of Earth's military capabilities. Primitive nuclear weapons, chemical propulsion rockets, radio wave communications. He almost felt disappointed. The humans posed no threat whatsoever. His second-in-command, a scarred veteran named Kryn, approached cautiously. "Commander, the humans have not responded to our ultimatum. They're in shock. Give them time to accept their fate." "Sir, I've reviewed 3 centuries of Imperial conquest records. Every species responds within 12 hours. The humans are approaching 48. Zephron's eyes narrowed. "Your point?" "Silence can mean 2 things, terror or defiance. With their technology, it's terror." But Kryn wasn't convinced. He'd seen too many easy conquests turn complicated. Something about the humans' silence felt wrong. On Earth, Amara stood before a secret assembly in a bunker beneath Brussels. Every major nation had sent their top military and scientific minds. The room buzzed with controlled chaos. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "we've analyzed their communication. The Valorians expect immediate capitulation. They've done this 17 times before and it's always worked." "So what's our play?" asked General Kane. "We give them exactly what they don't expect." Amara's eyes gleamed. "We negotiate." "Negotiate surrender?" Victor looked horrified. "No. Negotiate terms. We buy time, we learn their weaknesses, and we prepare." Dr. Tanaka stood. "I've finished analyzing their ship configurations. They're powerful, yes, but they're also arrogant. Their shields focus forward, protecting against frontal assaults. Their communications are encrypted, but the encryption is centuries old by quantum computing standards." "Meaning?" asked someone from the back. "Meaning we can crack their codes, spy on their internal communications, and potentially hack their systems." A collective breath seemed to fill the room. Hope, dangerous and intoxicating. "How long do you need?" Amara asked. 12 hours to infiltrate. 24 to understand their network. 48 to gain actionable intelligence. Amara checked her watch. "We have 23 hours left before their deadline. Make it work." As the meeting dissolved into frantic planning, Amara walked to a viewport overlooking the underground hangar. Rows of experimental aircraft sat ready, technologies developed in absolute secrecy over decades. Humanity had always prepared for the worst. Today the worst had arrived. Above Earth, Zephron studied the blue planet with growing impatience. The deadline was approaching and still the humans remained silent. No surrender. No defiance. Nothing. Prepare the orbital bombardment systems, he ordered. Target their major population centers. When the deadline expires, we'll demonstrate the price of resistance. Kryn saluted but felt the familiar weight of dread. He'd served in 17 conquests. 16 had been bloodless. The 17th had required what the Empire called corrective measures. He prayed the humans would surrender. But something told him they wouldn't. And he was right. The Gambit. With 6 hours remaining before the Valerian deadline, Earth's hidden facility in Nevada hummed with activity. Dr. Elias Thorne stood before a massive quantum computer, his fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. Around him, the world's best hackers and cryptographers worked in synchronized chaos. "We're in," announced a young technician named Ravi Shah. "Their communication network is wide open." Elias couldn't believe it. That was too easy. Not easy. They're just using military-grade encryption from their homeworld. Problem is, their homeworld's technology peaked 500 years ago. They're traditionalists who mistook stagnation for stability. On the main screen, Valerian communications scrolled past in real time. Battle reports, supply logistics, personal messages between crew members, and most importantly, command discussions. "Look at this," Yuki said, highlighting a conversation between Zephron and his superiors. "They're under pressure from the Empire's core worlds. 17 systems in 98 years sounds impressive until you realize the Empire spans 400 systems. They're underperformers. So they're desperate to prove themselves," Marcus understood immediately. "Which makes them dangerous. And predictable," Elias countered. "Desperate people make mistakes." Amara entered the command center, exhaustion evident on her face. "Tell me we have leverage." "Better than leverage. We have their playbook." Yuki pulled up tactical analyses. Every conquest follows the same pattern. Overwhelming display of force, ultimatum, conditional bombardment of one major city, then occupation. They haven't adapted their strategy in centuries. "Because they've never needed to," Marcus said grimly. "It always works. Then we change the script." Amara's decision was instant. "We respond. Not with surrender or defiance, but with curiosity." Curiosity? Victor had just arrived, looking skeptical. "The one thing they won't expect. We acknowledge their superiority and ask to learn from them. We request cultural exchange before formal submission." "You're gambling they're too arrogant to see the trap," Marcus said. "I'm gambling on human psychology being universal. Show me a bully who doesn't enjoy being admired." 2 hours before deadline, Earth transmitted its response. Zephron watched the holographic image of Amara Okonkwo with surprise. The human woman showed no fear, only diplomatic composure. "Fleet Commander Zephron, we acknowledge the Valerian Empire's supremacy. Earth's nations wish to formally surrender to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. However, we request a brief period for cultural transition. Many of our people have never conceived of extraterrestrial civilization. We ask for imperial representatives to help us understand our place in your empire." She paused, her expression carefully neutral. "We wish to surrender properly according to imperial custom. Teach us how to be worthy subjects." Silence filled the Dominion's fist bridge. Kryn watched his commander's face carefully. This was new. In 17 conquests, no species had ever asked to learn proper submission etiquette. "It's a trap," Kryn warned quietly. "Obviously," Zephron replied. "But refusing makes us look weak to our superiors. And what trap could primitives possibly set?" He keyed the communication system. "Your request is granted. I will send diplomatic envoys to your United Nations facility. They will instruct you in proper imperial protocols. You have 48 additional hours." The transmission ended. Zephron leaned back, satisfaction warming his cold blood. "Alert the High Command. Earth is surrendering with unprecedented grace. This will look excellent in our reports." Kryn said nothing, but his combat instincts screamed warnings. On Earth, Amara allowed herself a small smile. Phase 1 complete. "Dr. Thorne, how long until you can hack their ship systems?" "The envoys will carry personal communication devices. Once they're planetside, I can piggyback on their signals and access the fleet's network directly. Give me 6 hours after they land. General Kane, your team's ready? Standing by. Though I still think this is insane. That's what makes it perfect. The Valerian envoys arrived in 3 shuttle craft that landed simultaneously in Geneva, Beijing, and New York. Each carried 20 diplomatic representatives and twice as many guards. They emerged in ceremonial armor that gleamed like liquid metal, expecting primitive humans to cower in awe. Instead, they found prepared reception committees, translators, and carefully choreographed cultural exchange programs. Humans asked endless questions about Valerian history, customs, technology, and philosophy. The envoys, flattered by the attention, answered freely. What they didn't notice were the microdrones no larger than insects, cataloging every piece of their equipment. Or the subtle EM scanners mapping their biological weaknesses. Or Dr. Thorne's team infiltrating their communication devices. In Geneva, Amara personally toured a senior envoy named Thaxel through human art galleries. The Valerian officer seemed genuinely puzzled by abstract paintings. Why create images that represent nothing? He asked. Because imagination is our greatest weapon, Amara replied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Beneath Cheyenne Mountain, Elias cracked the fleet's central network. We're in deep. I have access to everything. Navigation, weapons, shields, life support. Can you disable them? Marcus demanded. Disable 300 warships simultaneously? No. But I can make them very, very uncomfortable. His smile was predatory. And I can give us their tactical response algorithms. We'll know their moves before they make them. Yuki studied the biological scans from the envoys. They're surprisingly fragile. High oxygen sensitivity, vulnerable to certain frequencies of electromagnetic radiation, and their armor has critical weak points at the joints. We're not trying to kill them, Amara reminded everyone. We're trying to make them leave. Same thing, different methods, Marcus muttered. 24 hours into the cultural exchange, Zephron grew impatient. Enough teaching. Time for submission. He ordered the envoys to present formal surrender documents to Earth's leaders. The ceremony was scheduled for dawn in Geneva. Every nation's representative would sign, acknowledging imperial authority. The humans agreed without hesitation. Still think it's a trap? Zephron asked Kryn. More than ever, sir. You worry too much. But that night, as the Valerian envoys slept in their secured accommodations, unaware that every conversation was monitored and every device was compromised, a different ceremony was taking place in underground facilities worldwide. Colonel Reeves stood before rows of soldiers equipped with armor that made Valerian equipment look primitive. Project Titan is no longer theoretical. You are the first true space combat unit in human history. Your objective is simple. Teach these bastards that Earth doesn't kneel. In Nevada, experimental aircraft powered by fusion drives prepared for launch. In orbit, disguised satellites began repositioning, their true nature hidden behind commercial transponder codes. On the ground, rail guns and directed energy weapons emerged from camouflaged installations that had waited decades for this moment. Humanity had prepared for alien contact since before the Valorians had discovered slipspace travel. The difference was that humans had imagined worst-case scenarios. The Valorians had assumed easy victories. Dawn approached. The signing ceremony awaited. And Earth was ready to show the Empire exactly what kind of species they. The Geneva sunrise painted the sky in shades of orange and pink as Valerian shuttles descended toward the United Nations Plaza. Inside the ornate assembly hall, cameras broadcast to the world. Humanity held its collective breath. Zephron watched from orbit, satisfaction warming his blood. Another conquest completed with minimal resistance. The High Command would finally recognize his fleet's efficiency. Sir, Kryn interrupted his thoughts. I'm detecting unusual electromagnetic signatures across the planet. Multiple sources, coordinated patterns. Probably they're primitive entertainment systems. They're broadcasting this ceremony globally. These signatures are military-grade, Commander. Zephron waved dismissively. You're seeing shadows. Watch them surrender and relax. Below, Thaxel and his envoy team entered the assembly hall. Amara and other world leaders stood waiting, dressed in formal attire. The surrender documents lay on an antique wooden table, ready for signatures. People of Earth, Thaxel began, his translator rendering his words in every language simultaneously, today you join the greatest civilization in the galaxy. By signing these documents, you acknowledge imperial authority and accept the peace that comes with submission. Amara stepped forward. The entire planet watched her next move. Representative Thaxel, before we sign, I have one question. The Valerian officer nodded magnanimously. Of course. In all your conquests, has any species ever said no? Thaxel's confusion was evident. Why would they? Resistance means destruction. I see. Amara's smile was cold. Then let me be the first. No. The word echoed through the hall. Through every broadcast. Across the entire planet. A simple word that changed everything. Thaxel's expression shifted from confusion to anger. You cannot refuse. You have seen our fleet. We can obliterate your cities in minutes. Then try. The signal was given. Across Earth, camouflaged installations came alive. Railguns that could punch through starship hulls emerged from hidden silos. Directed energy weapons locked onto orbital targets. And from underground hangars, sleek fighters unlike anything in the Valerian database streaked into the atmosphere on fusion drives that broke every known propulsion limit. Commander. Kryn's voice cracked with urgency. We're under attack. Multiple launch sites, weapons we can't classify. The first railgun round struck Dominion's fist amidships. The impact wasn't loud in the vacuum of space, but every Valerian felt it through the deck plates. Shields that should have stopped primitive kinetic weapons simply failed. Impossible, Zephyron breathed. Their technology was never primitive, Kryn finished. Sir, I'm reading quantum-level jamming on our communications. Our fleet network is compromised. Ships are reporting systems failures across all vessels. In Nevada, Elias Thorne orchestrated the greatest cyber attack in history. His team didn't try to control 300 warships. Instead, they introduced chaos. Navigation systems reported false positions. Weapons targeting became unreliable. Shield frequencies shifted randomly. Life support started malfunctioning in subtle ways that bred panic without actual danger. Make them scared, Elias had told his team. Fear is universal. The Valerian fleet began firing wildly, unable to coordinate. Their weapons were powerful but aimed at empty space because Earth's fighters moved like nothing they'd encountered. Humanity had studied every species' combat footage, learned from their mistakes and engineered perfection. Commander Silva Chun led the first fighter wing. Her call sign was Mongoose for good reason. She trained for this moment her entire adult life. All wings engage at will. Target their sensor arrays. Make them blind. The fighters danced through Valerian defensive fire with inhuman precision. Their AI-assisted piloting systems predicted enemy movements and exploited every weakness Yuki's team had identified. Directed energy weapons carved through Valerian sensors with surgical accuracy. D underestimated. In Geneva, Thaxel reached for his weapon, but Amara had anticipated this. The wood table wasn't wood at all. It generated an electromagnetic pulse that fried every Valerian device in the hall. The envoy's armor locked up, becoming prisons rather than protection. You lied, Thaxel gasped, struggling to move. The cultural exchange, the questions, all lies. No, Amara corrected calmly. We listened. You told us everything about your empire. Your tactics, your weaknesses, your arrogance. You assumed we were primitive because our cities are visible and our communications are open. You never considered that maybe we wanted you to see exactly what we chose to show you. Marcus Kane appeared on a massive screen behind her, broadcasting from Cheyenne Mountain. While your envoys enjoyed our hospitality, we mapped your entire fleet. We know which ships have the best commanders. Which crews are most experienced. Which vessels have maintenance issues you thought were secret. On screen, targeted strikes demonstrated this knowledge. The fighters focused on the fleet's most capable warships, forcing them into defensive positions while the less experienced vessels panicked. Aboard Dominion's Fist, Zephyron watched his perfect conquest crumble. Ships reported casualties. Systems failed faster than engineers could repair them. And most terrifying, the human fighters seemed to know exactly where his ships would be before they maneuvered. They're reading our tactical algorithms, Kryn reported, his voice steady despite the chaos. Sir, we need to retreat before. An explosion rocked the flagship. Not catastrophic but deliberate. The humans had targeted their slipspace drives with frightening precision. We can't jump, the chief engineer reported. Drive systems are offline. Repair them. Sir, the damage is surgical. They've destroyed specific components that will take weeks to replace. Zephyron finally understood. The humans weren't trying to destroy his fleet. They were crippling it, ensuring surrender was the only option. Silva's voice crackled over open frequencies, broadcast to every Valerian ship. Valerian fleet, this is Commander Chin of Earth Defense. Stand down immediately. Any ship attempting hostile action will be disabled. Any attempt to bombard our planet will result in your complete destruction. You have 2 minutes to respond. The silence was deafening. Compliance is mandatory, Silva added, throwing the Valorians' own words back at them. Aboard the flagship, Kryn looked at his commander. Sir, we cannot win this engagement. The humans have technological parity and tactical superiority. Their jamming is absolute. Half our fleet is combat ineffective. Zephron's pride warred with survival instinct. He'd conquered 17 systems. He'd never retreated. But he'd also never faced an enemy that had prepared so thoroughly. How? He whispered. How did primitives? They were never primitive, Kryn said gently. We were never looking. On Earth, Amara received reports of the fleet's paralysis. The Valerian ships hung in orbit like wounded animals, dangerous but defeated. General Kane, what's our casualty count? 0, Madam Secretary. Not a single human casualty. We have 3 fighters with minor damage, but all pilots are safe. Their orbital weapons never locked on successfully. Around the world, humanity erupted in celebration. But Amara knew the fight wasn't over. She opened a channel to the Valerian flagship. Commander Zephron, your fleet is disabled. Your envoys are captured. Your weapons are neutralized. You have 2 choices: leave our system and never return, or surrender and face trial for attempted conquest. On the screen, Zephron's face showed something humans recognized instantly: defeat. You're giving us a choice? We're humans, Amara said simply. We believe in choices. Even for our enemies. Especially for our enemies. That's what makes us different from your empire. The words hung between species, between philosophies, between 2 visions of civilization. Zephron made his decision. We surrender. But Commander Chin, know this: the Empire will return with overwhelming force. You've won a battle, not a war. Then we'll win the next one too, Silva responded. And the one after that. We've had practice. 5,000 years of human warfare taught us one thing: we're really good at it. The interrogation. The Valerian prisoners were held in separate facilities across the globe, their locations classified, their conditions comfortable but secure. Amara had insisted on humane treatment, much to Marcus's frustration. They were going to obliterate our cities, the general argued. Which is exactly why we won't become them, Amara replied firmly. We defeat them by being better, not by copying their cruelty. Commander Zephron sat alone in a secure room beneath the Swiss Alps. The walls were a pale blue, deliberately calming. His armor had been removed, replaced with simple civilian clothing that felt strange on his scales. A table separated him from his interrogator. Dr. Yuki Tanaka entered carrying 2 cups of tea. She set one before the Valerian commander and sipped from the other. It's Earl Grey. Very earth. You might like it. Zephron stared at the cup suspiciously. Is it poisoned? If we wanted you dead, Commander, you'd already be dead. Yuki's tone was matter-of-fact, not threatening. We want to talk. Understand. Learn why the Empire does what it does. Why does it matter? You won. Interrogate me for tactical data and be done with it. Because, Yuki leaned forward, in approximately 3 months, the Empire will notice your fleet hasn't reported. In 6 months they'll send investigators. In 9 months they'll send a larger fleet. We need to understand what we're really facing. Zephron studied this small human woman with new appreciation. She understood strategic thinking. What do you want to know? Everything. But let's start simple. Why does the Empire conquer? Why does any civilization expand? Resources. Territory. Survival. 18 systems should provide plenty of all 3. Yet the Empire spans 400. That's not survival. That's something else. Zephron was quiet for a long moment. Finally he sipped the strange earth beverage. It was actually pleasant. The Empire exists because it must expand. Our philosophy teaches that stagnation equals death. A civilization either grows or collapses. There is no middle ground. That's fascinating, Yuki said genuinely. Because humans believe exactly the opposite. We think unchecked expansion leads to collapse. That sustainable civilization requires balance, not endless growth. Then you'll stagnate and die. We've existed in our current form for 10,000 years. Your empire is what, 800 years old? We'll see who stagnates first. The barb struck home. Zephron realized this interrogation wasn't about extracting information. It was about challenging the fundamental assumptions the Valerian Empire was built upon. Meanwhile, Thaxel sat across from Ambassador Viktor Petrov in a facility outside Moscow. The Russian diplomat had brought vodka, of all things. "This is how my people seal agreements," Viktor explained, pouring 2 glasses. "We share drink, we share truth. I'm your prisoner. What truth would I share? Not prisoner. Guest who cannot leave." Viktor's smile was thin. "Big difference. Tell me, Thaxel, do you enjoy conquest?" The question caught the Valerian envoy off guard. "Enjoy? It's duty." "Ah, duty? I understand duty." Viktor drank his vodka in one swallow. "I served in military before diplomacy. I know what duty costs. But I asked different question. Do you enjoy it?" Thaxel found himself answering honestly. "No. The excitement wore off after my 3rd campaign. Now it's simply necessary." "Then why continue?" "Because the empire requires it. Because advancement depends on successful conquests. Because questioning the system means execution." Viktor poured another glass. "So you conquer to survive in system that requires conquest to prove you deserve to survive. You see problem, yes? I see the reality of imperial service. I see prison with extra steps." Viktor leaned back. "Tell me about Valerian culture outside military. Art? Music? What do your people do when not conquering?" Thaxel struggled to answer. When had he last engaged with Valerian culture? When had any military officer? The empire's entire society revolved around expansion and martial achievement. Art was propaganda. Music celebrated victories. Literature recounted conquests. "We have culture," he said defensively. "Then why you sound uncertain?" In Cheyenne Mountain, Colonel Reeves and Dr. Elias Thorne reviewed intelligence gathered from captured Valerian databases. What they found was troubling. "The empire's economy is a Ponzi scheme," Elias explained, showing complex financial projections. "They conquer new systems, extract resources, use those resources to fund the next conquest. Each campaign must be bigger than the last to maintain the illusion of endless growth." "What happens if they stop expanding?" Reeves asked. "Economic collapse. Social upheaval. Potential civil war. The empire literally cannot stop conquering without destroying itself." "Jesus. They're trapped in their own system. Worse. They know it. Look at these internal memos from the high command." Elias highlighted sections. "They're aware the model is unsustainable. They're just hoping they'll find a solution before it all falls apart. And Earth was supposed to be conquest number 18. Easy victory, minimal resistance, quick resource extraction to fund the next campaign. Except we broke their script." Reeves considered the implications. "So when reinforcements arrive, they won't just be angry. They'll be desperate." "Exactly. Desperate enemies are dangerous." This assessment reached Amara within the hour. She called an emergency council of the world's leaders. The underground conference room in Brussels hummed with translation systems as representatives from every nation gathered. "We face a choice," Amara began without preamble. "When the Empire sends their next fleet, we can destroy it as we did the first. But that only delays the inevitable. Eventually they'll come with overwhelming force, or worse, they'll use weapons we can't defend against." "So we surrender?" someone asked incredulously. "No. We change the game entirely." Amara pulled up economic projections. "The Empire's economy depends on conquest. What if we offer them something more valuable than subjugation?" General Kane saw where she was going. "Trade. Alliance. Partnership." "They'll never accept," Viktor protested. "Their entire culture is built on dominance. Then we help them build a new culture." Amara's eyes gleamed with dangerous optimism. "We don't defeat the Empire. We transform it." The room erupted in argument. The suggestion was radical, possibly insane. But as the debate raged, a quieter conversation happened between Yuki and Elias via secure channel. "Can it work?" Yuki asked. "Theoretically? Yes. Culturally? I have no idea." Elias ran calculations. "We'd need to demonstrate that cooperation yields better results than conquest. We'd need to show their own people that there's another way. So we make the Valerian prisoners our test case." "Exactly." Over the following weeks, the captured Valorians experienced something unprecedented in imperial history: genuine hospitality. They weren't tortured for information. They were asked questions about their lives, their hopes, their fears. Human psychologists and sociologists studied them not as enemies, but as people trapped in a system that demanded constant warfare. Zephyron found himself in long conversations with Yuki about philosophy, culture, and the nature of civilization. Despite himself, he began to question assumptions he'd held his entire life. What if, Yuki posed one afternoon, the Empire's philosophy is wrong? What if sustainable civilization requires not expansion but deepening? Not conquest but cooperation? Then everything I've done, every system I've conquered was meaningless. Not meaningless, just built on faulty assumptions. You can choose differently going forward. The Empire won't let me. Then maybe, Yuki said carefully, it's time for the Empire to change. Or for someone to build something better. Seeds were being planted. Ideas were taking root. And when the Empire's investigative fleet arrived in 6 months, they would find something far more dangerous than military resistance. They would find humans who believed change was possible. The response. 6 months after the failed conquest, the Valerian investigative fleet emerged from slipspace at the edge of Sol system. Admiral Corvin commanded this force personally. 50 warships, all battle-hardened, all crewed by veterans who'd heard whispers about Zephron's mysterious disappearance. Scan for the conquest fleet, Corvin ordered, his 4 eyes studying tactical displays with cold precision. Admiral, I'm detecting the original 300 vessels. They're in orbit around the 3rd planet. Minimal power signatures. They appear disabled. Silence gripped the bridge. 300 warships disabled? Impossible. Survivors? Corvin's voice was dangerous. Unknown, sir. But I'm detecting a transmission from the planet. It's addressed to you specifically. On the main screen, a human face appeared. Amara Okonkwo, looking composed and diplomatic. Admiral Corvin, welcome to Sol System. I'm Secretary General Amara Okonkwo of Earth. We've been expecting you. Where is Commander Zephron? Corvin demanded. Safe. Comfortable. Currently teaching our linguists about Valerian verb conjugation, actually. He's developed a passion for etymology. Amara's slight smile was genuine. All your people are safe, Admiral. This might surprise you, but we don't kill prisoners. We talk to them. You will return them immediately and submit to Imperial authority, or I will reduce your planet to glass. Yes, I've heard that threat. Commander Zephron made similar claims. Amara's expression hardened. Let me be clear, Admiral. Your fleet is welcome to try what the previous fleet attempted. We'll disable your ships just as efficiently. Or you can do something unprecedented. Which is? Talk. Learn. Understand why the conquest model is failing your empire. The empire has conquered 400 systems. It doesn't fail. Then why did the High Command send you personally, Admiral? Why not a standard battle group? Amara let the question hang. We've had 6 months to study your culture, your economy, your politics. We know you're here because the Empire is terrified. 300 ships disappeared. No distress signals. No debris fields. Just gone. The High Command fears we captured some weapon or technology beyond their understanding. Corvin said nothing, but his silence was answer enough. The truth is simpler and more frightening, Amara continued. We're just humans who refuse to be conquered. But we're also humans who believe in alternatives to violence. So here's my offer, send a shuttle. Meet with us. Talk with your captured people. Then decide whether to fight or forge a different path. And if I choose to fight? Then you'll lose, and 6 months from now an even larger fleet will arrive. And they'll lose too. Eventually the Empire will face a choice. Accept that Earth cannot be conquered or waste resources trying until your economy collapses. The transmission ended. Corvin stood motionless, processing the human's words. Around him, his bridge crew waited nervously. Finally he turned to his second officer. Thran, you were at the conquest of Seraph 9. What made that species surrender? Overwhelming force, sir. We obliterated their moon as demonstration. And they surrendered immediately? Within hours, Admiral. Corvin's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Yet humans disabled 300 warships and captured all crew without killing anyone. That requires technological sophistication and strategic brilliance. Tell me, if they wanted us dead, would we be having this conversation? No one answered. Prepare my personal shuttle. I'm going planet-side. Sir. Multiple officers protested simultaneously. If the humans wanted hostages, they'd have killed Zephron's crew and demanded our surrender. Instead, they're offering dialogue. Corvin's ancient eyes held knowledge earned through centuries of conquest. I want to understand what broke 300 ships without destroying them. I want to meet the species that thinks talking is more effective than killing. 2 hours later, Corvin's shuttle descended toward Geneva. The landing coordinates placed him in an open plaza, visible to everyone, deliberately non-threatening. When the ramp lowered, he emerged to find Amara waiting with a small delegation. No weapons. No soldiers. Just diplomats and scientists. Admiral Corvin, Amara greeted formally. Thank you for coming. Where is Commander Zephron? Waiting inside. Before you see him, I should warn you, he's changed. Changed how? He's been thinking. The warning proved accurate. Corvin found Zephron in a sunlit conference room overlooking Lake Geneva, engaged in animated conversation with Dr. Yuki Tanaka about economic sustainability models. The former Conquest commander looked relaxed. Content even? Admiral, Zephron stood, offering the traditional Valerian salute. It's good to see you. Commander, report. What happened here? Commander, report. What happened here? Zephron gestured to chairs. Sir, I failed to conquer Earth because I made a critical error. I assumed technological primitives would be strategic primitives. I was wrong on both counts. They defeated 300 warships. They defeated our arrogance, sir. Our tactics haven't evolved in centuries because they've never needed to. We've conquered species who were either too primitive to resist or too peaceful to fight effectively. Humans are neither. Zephron pulled up holographic data. They've spent 5,000 years fighting each other. They've perfected warfare through trial, error, and adaptation. When we arrived, they simply applied those lessons to us. Corvin studied the tactical analyses. The human victory was comprehensive and surgical. They could have destroyed us. That's what makes them dangerous, Admiral. They chose not to. They're showing us there's an alternative to the conquest model. The Empire doesn't negotiate with primitives. They're not primitives. Zephron's outburst surprised everyone, including himself. Sir, I've spent 6 months studying human civilization. They've achieved things the Empire never has. Art that challenges rather than celebrates. Science that questions rather than confirms. Philosophy that admits uncertainty rather than demanding absolute truth. They're chaotic and contradictory, and somehow that makes them stronger, not weaker. Corvin stared at his subordinate. You've been compromised. I've been educated. There's a difference. The High Command will see treason. Then the High Command is blind to a truth that will destroy the Empire if we don't face it. Zephron's voice was steady. Admiral, the conquest model is failing. You know it. I know it. The economic projections don't lie. We're 1 or 2 failed campaigns away from collapse. Earth didn't just defeat our fleet. They exposed the fundamental weakness in our entire civilization. Amara intervened gently. Admiral Corvin, we're not asking you to betray the Empire. We're offering you evidence that might save it. Let us show you what we've learned about sustainable civilization. Then make your own decision. Over the next 72 hours, Corvin received an education that shook his worldview. Human economists explained how cooperation generated more wealth than extraction. Sociologists demonstrated how diverse perspectives led to innovation. Historians showed how civilizations that balanced growth with stability outlasted those that expanded recklessly. Most impactfully, he spoke with every member of Zephron's crew. Some remained loyal to imperial doctrine. But many, especially the younger officers, spoke quietly about doubts they'd harbored for years. About wondering if there was more to life than conquest. About wanting families and futures beyond military service. What you're describing, Corvin finally said to Amara, would require dismantling everything the Empire represents. No. It would require evolution. The Empire can still be powerful, still be influential. But instead of taking through force, you could gain through partnership. Instead of subjects, you could have allies. The High Command will never accept this. Then don't convince them. Convince your people. Amara's eyes gleamed with strategic vision. Admiral, you command 50 ships. Zephron commanded 300. That's 350 crews who've now seen an alternative to endless warfare. What if you returned to the Empire and simply talked about what you found here? Not rebellion. Just conversation. Questions. Doubts. You're asking me to spread sedition. I'm asking you to spread hope. Corvin was silent for a long time. Finally, he stood and walked to the window. Geneva stretched below, a city of impossible beauty built by species the Empire had dismissed as primitive. Humans had created this through cooperation, innovation, and the messy chaos of democracy. If I do this, he said slowly, the High Command will see it as treason. They'll send overwhelming force to Earth. They'll send it to crush the idea that alternatives exist. We know, Amara said quietly. We're prepared for that too. Are you prepared for planetary bombardment from orbit? Kinetic weapons that will shatter continents? biological weapons that will sterilize all life. Are you prepared to be the civilization that commits genocide because you're too afraid to change? The question hung between them, terrible and true. Corvin made his decision. I'll return to the Empire. I'll make my report. I'll tell them Earth cannot be conquered through conventional means, that any attempt will cost more than we can afford. I'll recommend opening diplomatic channels. He turned to face Amara directly. But understand this, the High Command is old, conservative and terrified of change. They will reject my counsel. They will send a fleet designed to end you permanently. How long do we have? 1 year. Perhaps less. Then we'll make it count. The preparation. The year following Admiral Corvin's departure was the most transformative in human history. Every nation, every culture, every ideology that had ever divided humanity now united under a single purpose: survival. But humanity didn't just prepare for war. They prepared to change the galaxy. In orbit above Earth, construction crews from every nation worked together on projects that would have seemed impossible a year earlier. Massive shipyards assembled the first human deep space fleet. Unlike the Valerian vessels, human ships were built for adaptability rather than overwhelming force. They could fight, certainly, but they could also explore, trade, and serve humanitarian purposes. We're not building a war fleet, Amara explained during a press conference broadcast globally. We're building the foundation for human civilization among the stars. If the Empire forces us to fight, we'll fight. But we're also preparing for the day after the fighting stops. Commander Silva Chen led the military expansion. Her fighter wings had grown from experimental squadrons to full battle groups. But she insisted on training protocols that emphasized precision over destruction. Anyone can blow up a ship, she told her pilots. Your job is to disable enemies while keeping casualties minimal. We're not trying to commit genocide. We're trying to survive while maintaining our humanity. Dr. Elias Thorne's team worked on something more subtle and potentially more powerful. They'd spent the year developing what they called liberation protocols, sophisticated information warfare designed to spread ideas rather than destruction. The Empire controls its people through information monopoly, Elias explained to the Security Council. They determine what their citizens see, hear, and believe. But information wants to be free. We're just going to help it along. You're talking about psychological warfare, Marcus Kane said bluntly. I'm talking about offering people the truth and letting them decide what to do with it. The protocols were elegant. Hidden within normal communications, they would infiltrate Valerian networks and simply ask questions. Not propaganda. Not lies. Just questions designed to make people think. Why does the Empire need endless conquest? What happened to civilizations before the Empire? What do other species believe? What possibilities exist beyond imperial doctrine? Meanwhile, on Valoria Prime, Admiral Corvin made his report to the High Command. The ancient amphitheater held the Empire's most powerful leaders, military commanders, economic ministers, and the Emperor himself, a being so old that most citizens considered him mythological. Earth cannot be conquered through conventional means, Corvin concluded his presentation. They possess technological parity and strategic superiority. Any assault will result in unacceptable casualties and resource expenditure. Supreme Commander Rexeth, oldest of the Military Council, rose to speak. His voice carried the weight of 400 conquered systems. You recommend we allow a primitive species to defy imperial authority? I recommend we recognize they're not primitive and consider alternatives to conquest. There are no alternatives. The Empire expands or dies. Then perhaps, Corvin said carefully, the Empire's premise requires examination. The chamber erupted. Accusations of treason. Demands for execution. Calls for immediate military response. Through it all, Emperor Thaisien sat silent, his ancient eyes studying Corvin with unsettling intensity. Finally, the Emperor raised one clawed hand. Silence fell instantly. Admiral Corvin, the Emperor's voice was surprisingly soft, you have served for 2 centuries. You have conquered 30 systems personally. Your loyalty has never been questioned. So when you suggest we examine our fundamental premise, I listen. He paused, letting the words sink in. Tell me plainly, will war with Earth succeed? No, Your Eminence. Will it weaken the Empire? Catastrophically. And yet you believe the High Command will order the attack regardless? Yes. The Emperor was silent for a long moment. You're correct. This council will vote to send overwhelming force to Earth. They will do so because they cannot imagine alternatives to the conquest doctrine. Because admitting Earth's resistance has merit would mean questioning 800 years of imperial philosophy. He stood, his ancient body moving with surprising grace. But I have lived long enough to see civilizations rise and fall. Long enough to know that rigidity leads to collapse. Admiral Corvin, you will command the assault on Earth. Corvin's shock was evident. Your Eminence. You will command it, but you will exercise full tactical discretion. If you find that conquest is impossible or inadvisable, you may explore alternatives. The High Command will expect total victory or total destruction. I expect you to find a third option. You're asking me to defy the High Command. I'm asking you to save the Empire from its own doctrines. Go to Earth. Fight if you must. But also talk. Learn. Find a path forward that doesn't require us to destroy a species that might teach us something valuable. Rexeth protested immediately. Your Eminence, this is final, the Emperor interrupted. Admiral Corvin has his orders. Assemble the fleet. 6 months later, the largest Valerian armada in history assembled at the edge of Sol system. 5,000 warships, enough firepower to crack planets. Corvin stood on the bridge of the flagship Imperial Will, knowing he carried the future of 2 civilizations in his decisions. Detecting Earth Defense Fleet, his tactical officer reported. Estimated strength, 800 vessels. Impossibly, humanity had built a fleet in less than a year. But Corvin noticed something unusual in the formation patterns. Their ships aren't arranged for optimal defense. They're scattered, like they're inviting us to specific engagement zones. It's a trap, obviously, Rexeth said. He'd insisted on joining the fleet personally. They'll have hidden weapons in those zones. Or, Corvin said thoughtfully, they're trying to minimize collateral damage to their planet. Look at the positions. Every engagement zone is away from Earth itself. You're seeing cooperation where there's only tactics. Perhaps tactics can be cooperation. Amara's face appeared on every screen in the Valerian fleet simultaneously, another demonstration of humanity's information warfare capabilities. Admiral Corvin, welcome back. I see you brought friends. Before this gets violent, I have something to show you. Something your crews need to see. Then we can discuss whether today ends in warfare or dialogue. Show us, Corvin said, ignoring Rexeth's protests. The transmission that followed would change everything. The new dawn. The holographic transmission played simultaneously across 5,000 Valerian warships. Every screen, every display, every personal device showed the same content. Testimonials from Zephron's crew members, 6 months of their experiences on Earth. Young engineer KYSS spoke first. I was taught humans were primitive. I was wrong. They're building a space elevator using materials that shouldn't exist according to our physics. They invited me to help design it. Me. A prisoner. They treated me like a colleague. Medical officer teacher YSS followed. I've studied their biological diversity. One species with thousands of genetic variations, living together, learning from differences rather than eliminating them. The Empire calls this weakness. I call it strength we never understood. Even hardened soldiers shared their experiences. Captain Venn, a decorated combat veteran, spoke quietly. I was taught strength means domination. Humans taught me strength means choosing mercy when you could choose violence. They defeated us without killing us. That's power we've never conceived. The testimonials continued. Valerian officers praising human art, culture, philosophy, and technology. Not propaganda. Genuine experiences from trusted military personnel. On the Imperial Will Bridge, Corvin watched his crew's reactions. Confusion. And something more dangerous, curiosity. This is psychological warfare, Rexeth snarled. Manipulated testimony designed to tell the truth, Corvin interrupted. I was there, Supreme Commander. I verified every word personally. Our people experienced genuine human civilization and it challenged everything they believed. Then they're compromised. All of them. Or enlightened. There's a difference. Rexeth reached for his sidearm. By Imperial law, I'm relieving you of command for. He never finished. 3 of Corvin's bridge officers moved simultaneously, disarming and restraining the Supreme Commander with professional efficiency. Treason. Rexeth bellowed. This is treason. No, Corvin said sadly. This is evolution. I'm sorry, old friend. But I won't lead 5,000 ships to pointless destruction because our civilization refuses to adapt. He opened a fleet-wide channel. All vessels, this is Admiral Corvin. Stand down from combat readiness. I'm ordering a ceasefire while we explore alternatives to conflict. Silence. Then gradually ships began powering down weapons. Not all, some remained loyal to Imperial doctrine. But enough. More than half the fleet accepted Corvin's authority. "Admiral," his tactical officer said quietly, "we're receiving a transmission from Emperor Thaisien. Private channel. Eyes only." Corvin activated it. The Emperor's ancient face appeared. "Admiral, I'm watching your mutiny with great interest. How many ships will follow you?" "Perhaps 3,000, Your Eminence. The rest will likely return to Valoria Prime to report my treason." "Then you've split the fleet and created a civil war. Well done." Corvin blinked in surprise. "Your Eminence? Did you think I sent 5,000 ships without anticipating this outcome?" "Admiral, the Empire is dying. Our economy teeters on collapse. Our people grow restless under endless military service. Our culture stagnates. I hoped Earth would provide the catalyst for necessary change." The Emperor's smile was reptilian and satisfied. "You've given me the excuse I needed to pursue reform. The Loyalist fleet will return claiming treason. I'll use their reports to purge the most rigid elements of the High Command and begin restructuring Imperial society." "You used me. I used you to save our civilization." "You're welcome." The Emperor's expression softened slightly. "Stay with Earth, Admiral. Build an alliance. Show the Empire what cooperation looks like. In 10 years, when you return to Valoria Prime, you won't be executed as a traitor. You'll be celebrated as the founder of a new Imperial doctrine." The transmission ended. Corvin stood motionless, processing centuries of military service and realizing his Emperor had maneuvered him into revolutionizing the Empire itself. Amara's voice crackled over the communications system. "Admiral? We're detecting fleet fragmentation. Are you all right?" "Secretary General Okonkwo, I'm formally requesting political asylum for approximately 3,000 Valerian vessels and their crews. We wish to explore alternatives to the conquest model and potentially establish the first human Valorian alliance." On Earth, celebrations erupted. The invasion fleet hadn't invaded, it had defected. Over the following months, the transformation began in earnest. Valerian engineers worked alongside human scientists, combining technologies and philosophies. The fusion was revolutionary. Valerian industrial capacity merged with human innovation. Valerian discipline combined with human creativity. The first joint colony was established on Mars. The second on Europa. The third around Proxima Centauri. Not conquest. Not extraction. Partnership. Worlds built together, governed by councils representing both species equally. Zephyron, meanwhile, became humanity's first ambassador to the remaining Valerian Empire. He returned to Valoria Prime with Yuki at his side, carrying proposals for trade agreements, cultural exchanges and mutual defense pacts. Emperor Thaisien received them in the same amphitheater where Corvin had once stood trial. But the atmosphere was different now. The most rigid high command members had been replaced with younger officers who'd heard stories from the defected fleet. "Ambassador Zephyron," the Emperor greeted formally, "you return as a very different being than the commander who left to conquer Earth. I return as someone who learned there are more valuable things than conquest, Your Eminence." "Convince me." Over the next 6 hours, Zephyron and Yuki presented their vision. A Valerian empire transformed from conqueror to coordinator. A civilization that facilitated trade rather than extraction, that offered protection rather than subjugation, that built partnerships rather than imposed authority. "You're describing a fundamental restructuring of imperial society," observed one council member. "We're describing survival," Yuki responded. "The conquest model was always going to fail eventually. Earth simply forced you to confront that reality sooner. But failure creates opportunity. You can become something unprecedented. An empire that leads through cooperation rather than coercion." The debate raged for weeks. Conservative factions resisted every proposal. Progressive elements pushed for even more radical changes. Compromise emerged slowly, painfully, through countless negotiations. Finally, Emperor Thaisien made his proclamation. "The Valerian Empire will cease territorial conquest effective immediately. We will restructure as the Valerian Concordat, a federation of allied systems bound by mutual benefit rather than military occupation. Former subject species will be offered genuine autonomy with Concordat protection and trade access. Military forces will transition from conquest fleets to defensive peacekeeping." The changes weren't instantaneous. Rebellions erupted in some systems. Some species rejected cooperation with their former oppressors. Some Valerian colonies refused to accept the new doctrine. But gradually, painfully, a new civilization emerged. 5 years after the Empire knocked on Earth's door, Amara stood at the dedication ceremony for Unity Station. a massive orbital platform built jointly by humans and Valorians, serving as the headquarters for what was now called the Sol-Valoria Alliance. Admiral Corvin stood beside her, his military service transformed into diplomatic leadership. "Did you ever imagine it would end like this?" he asked. "I imagined we'd survive. I hoped we might change the galaxy. But this." Amara gestured to the station where dozens of species now worked together, learning from each other, building something unprecedented. "This exceeds my wildest hopes." The High Command once asked what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object, Corvin mused. "We learn the answer, they stop fighting and start talking. And sometimes," Amara added with a smile, "they build something better than either could alone." Across the galaxy, the transformation spread. Species that had been conquered now negotiated genuine alliances. Technologies merged. Cultures exchanged. And slowly, the idea that cooperation was stronger than conquest became the foundation for a new interstellar civilization. The Valerian Empire had knocked on Earth's door expecting easy victory. Instead, they found a mirror that forced them to see themselves clearly. And in that reflection, both species discovered something powerful. The future didn't belong to conquerors or the conquered. It belonged to those brave enough to choose partnership over domination, to choose dialogue over violence, to choose evolution over extinction. Earth hadn't just defended itself against an empire. It had helped an empire become something worth defending. And that, ultimately, was the most human thing of all.